Mr. Baker, as you're describing this particular uh, data and this growth data, can you share with us the period of time when this data was collected?
So we had the kids tested in the fall of 21, they tested in the winter of 21, and then the spring of 22, and then this is the test for the fall of 22. So it's just 1 year growth with a summer in between. So the reading growth data, there's typically a difference in growth between the language arts assessment and the reading assessment. So here we are, first grade, second, third grade really had a ton of growth. Fourth grade, nice. Fifth grade, pretty solid. Sixth grade still was touching that growth goal. Seventh grade really dropped off. I took a look at this, and this is kind of a historic trend for NWEA for our district, where there's a significant drop in the reading assessment for NWEA for seventh grade. So I'm not sure if I can tell you why that is, but that is the case year after year when looking at our data. And then the eighth grade back in the projected growth area, projected growth goal. Ready Math is our new math assessment, our new math book series. And we are not taking the NWA math assessment this year, we are taking the iReady math assessment. And this is probably the scariest thing for me to look at, because this is the kids taking an end of course assessment at the beginning of the year. So it looks bad, but it's not quite as bad as it seems, even though we do have some room to improve. So this is the students taking this assessment at the beginning of this school year for what they should have mastered at the end of the school year. And you can see that 24% of our students fell 3 or more grade levels below, and 18% fell 2 grade levels below, 46% 1 grade level below, and then 8% early on grade level, and 4% mid or above grade level. So that's,
This is third, fourth, fifth, and sixth?
This is 3rd through 8th.
Through 8.
Yes, sir.
I know that you don't have a magic wand, but do we have any idea how to identify what the roadblocks are from the end of the year to the beginning of the year when they take that test again? I know you don't.
From the end of like last week.
Excuse me, when, the drop off.
So I think we have a lot of students, a significant number of students who are behind in math. Our math iLearn scores show that. This data shows that. This is a data, I don't expect to see miracles happen with our performance data, but I do expect to see growth throughout this year so we can increase our performance data. So this will show that. I don't know if there's the drop off over the summer when students take an assessment, NWA in the spring and then take it again in the fall. That's just.
I apologize for putting you on the spot. Like I said, I know that you don't have the magic wand.
I gotcha.
And I would have asked you this question ahead of time if it had sprung up on me. But again, this has been something that's been going on for some time, and just trying to equate what are the issues that ultimately in 3 months' time lead to this spiral downward.
So this assessment isn't anything to do with last spring. This assessment is the first time we've ever given it is this fall. But what happens during the summer is if students aren't reading, if students aren't working on any type of educational program, or they're not working with anybody in particular. My poor kids, my wife has them working on different things throughout the summer, and I appreciate that, but I also feel for them that, if I were an 8th grader or a 4th grader, I wouldn't be digging that. So it's that piece. There's always a drop off across the state and across the country over the summer. There's learning loss, but
I appreciate your answer because it's the most honest answer that there is, and there are things that we can dictate and to an extent mandate, from August until the end of May, but it's that no man's land
Yep.
that we can't control. And unfortunately, whether it be on this test or anything else traditionally that we've experienced here, it ultimately falls back on what is happening outside of our,
Right.
and the things that we can't control. And until we get to a point where everybody values education, continuous education all year round, and summer break doesn't necessarily mean breaking off for the summer,
Right.
but education's got to continue. So.
Yep. And I'm in the elementary principals. Miss Oncini will tell you, one of my passions is getting our parents more involved in this type of thing. But I need to make sure we're doing it at the right time, where everybody's ready to go, and try to get just more parental involvement. That is a big part of what we need to work on.
I've got a question here. I know this is the first time using this assessment as opposed to NWEA. And in the past with NWEA, we'd be able to at least chart growth on the data we're seeing. And so this is all new, and it's a jumping off point more than anything. I know with COVID and the pandemic, there was a huge loss statewide, nationwide of students with even in the growth of the NWEA and everything else. What kind of numbers are we looking at statewide, nationwide to compare with here? I mean, do we have that data yet, or?
I have the state data. I just can't share it yet. It's still embargoed.
Okay.
But we are. We're below the state average.
Right.
But we all the data has been negatively impacted.
Sure.
Just with learning loss. So I do have the state data. I would love to show it to you today. I actually called the IDOE this morning to ask if I could show it to you, and they told me no.
Right.
They're still embargoed, but.
And that's the one thing we got to keep into consideration here too, is as dismal as some of this looks. I mean, it is a jumping off point, and we're not. It's not like we're able to go back and see the growth impacted yet because we don't have that data.
We'll be able to have that growth data next month.
But at the same time, to Mr. Walton's point, I think it also highlights, going back to what Mr. Stevens mentioned, some of the challenges that our faculty and staff, as well
100%.
as our parents, guardians, and we as a corporation have before us. When we think of, as Mr. Baker has presented, when we think of the fact that we have 42% of our students right now, either 2 or 3 grade levels behind where they need to be with this particular assessment. Yes, it's the first time, it's rather baseline, but that it becomes alarming that indeed this is what the data is currently revealing. But at the same time, I think it also provides us with a lot of opportunity, and for our hardworking faculty and staff and our administrative teams to really present down the road better performance data.
And if I may interject, just remember the NWA was a RIT score we were looking at, and with iReady, it's standards mastery. So we're looking at 2 different things this school year when it comes to reading and language versus math. And so when you look at standards mastery, you're seeing whether students are achieving that specific standard versus a continuum of a RIT score with NWA. So we are transitioning. But we can, and I'm sure that Mr. Baker is also going to go into this in his next slide. But one thing worth noting on that language arts, which was the first slide, is last year we had SMECNs, professional development, and we saw growth, if you remember, in those slides. And so, or on that data. So I think that's one thing worth mentioning, is that a celebration of our staff and embracing that SMECNs model and the growth that we saw in language arts. So as you say, what factors are increasing student achievement? I think we can say that specific focus for professional development has increased language arts results.
Which comes back and bodes well with the intentionality found with some of our new framework initiatives in professional development surrounding the National Institute for Excellence in Teaching, also known as NIT.
I just want to go back and understand. This is a test that was given at the beginning of the year, so there's no comparison to now. This is just a one-time snapshot at the beginning of the year. Now, when you say I read, is that data compared statewide or national? I mean, when we're setting the standard and we're measuring ourselves against, explain to what are we measuring ourselves against?
So this iReady assessment is measured against every student in the country taking this assessment.
So
which
it's
is-
a national norm.
Yeah, it's a large company, just like NWEA. You know, there are districts that don't use NWEA at all, and there are districts that have been using it for years. So
No, so do they have it broke down to also state law? I mean, is there a
it's always a national,
only
it's
national?
always a national norm.
And so Mr. Slifer, just for clarification, I read and I ready are two different entities. Sound very much the same, it's very, very confusing.
I've
First of
seen
all,
you talking about this.
yeah, oh, yeah. And so nevertheless, to Mr. Slifer's point, I think that with the national data, we are definitely anxious to continue to see what, how we compare.
Well, I always get concerned, well, I shouldn't say concerned, but we always measure ourselves against something. So I'm more interested in measuring against the growth. I mean, I would much rather see growth, but in the past, there's been a lot of different numbers between when you're doing a state comparison, when you're doing a national comparison. I mean, I get just a little bit leery when we're always comparing ourselves to some unknown.
And we will have that growth data when we take the next benchmark on iReady. So we'll be able to see what growth looks like on the standards that we tested in the fall.
I'll just follow up. I mean, I understand the growth, but I really like the mastery because it's someone that lived their life in math all through their schooling. You know, we have focused so much on literacy and reading, and it's equally important, but I think at the expense of math. I mean, I think of what we do with the third grade academy. I mean, I can envision us having more programming to get these kids back up to grade level. And I think this is exactly the data that tells us that's what we need to do. So I get the growth and I get all the other, but I'm not happy with where we're at, but I think this gives us where we need to go.
Right. And, go on.
No, you go ahead.
I will tell you, without getting too far into it, if you ever want to see this more in detail, I could show you at a later date. But down here at the placement by domain, there's number and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data and geometry. And when you break this data down through their website, it shows you every student's level and how to kind of group students and attack to provide some intervention or mediation for those students. So it is broken down by every student in pretty fine detail, even providing interventions for those students linked right to that student's page.
Is it typical to give iReady at the beginning of the year, just to get a baseline, I guess, so we can see the growth, and then is it given again just at the end of the year?
3 times, so
Okay,
it'll be
3
given
times.
just next month, and then it will be given in the spring, and then we'll, next fall, give it again, and we'll have that growth data, from this spring until the fall.
Mr. Baker, can you describe interventions, and when you say it's a link to the student's page, can you just elaborate on that a little further for our parents and guardians?
So
and
if there,
continuing?
the one thing I'm finding is when I'm looking at student data, let's say we're looking at a 4th grade class, we might have a student that's testing middle of 4th grade for numbers and operations, into 4th grade for algebraic thinking, middle of 4th grade for measurement, but beginning of 3rd grade for geometry. And so sometimes I would think, do their parents even know that they're below grade level in geometry? Did the teacher realize that? Because this is probably a high performing student. So when you break down, Brent Baker's data page, it's going to show you where I'm struggling in geometry, and it's going to provide little worksheets that, let's say you and I are struggling with the same thing in geometry, where you can pair us together to work on the same concept, and then have a little feedback from that little assignment.
And so again, for our classroom instructors as well as the parents and guardians at home, this is a great resource and tool to know exactly where to turn their energies and focus.
I was talking from a teacher's perspective, yes.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
So
All right.
this page right here is a little bit better to look at. This is the beginning of the year. This year, 58% of our students if you look over to the right, if it's green, they are one grade level below their current grade or early, mid, or late within their current grade level. So 58% of the students that assessed, this is based on the beginning of the year, not the end, placed in tier 1. 18% of our students 2 grade levels below their current grade level, and 24% of our students 3 or more grade levels below their current grade. And we really have to attack that and fix that. Questions about that? All right, this is my path. This is probably one of my favorite things about Ready Math is once the students were assessed in the fall, they were put on a path based on their assessment. And that is a kind of individualized instruction for that student that can take place inside the classroom or at home. Our goal is for the students to be on my path for 30 to 49 minutes a week. And this is a couple weeks ago now because when I pulled this data, it was a few weeks ago. But this is our district, 2,206 students. 25% met the goal, 33% were higher than what we asked, and 30% were 10 to 29 minutes. But what I'm most impressed with over here, 86% was the average of lessons passed by our students working on that on their path.
So is this like a computer-generated, individual-based program that the
Yes.
students work on?
Yes, there's a program that I've used for the last decade called Alex, and I believe Alex is probably the most single powerful educational program, and this is kind of a spin-off off Alex that comes with our textbook series. Federal report card. So this is from last school year. This is overall math, and this is broken down by school and just by growth in general. We had 4 schools meet the math growth indicator last year. That would be Vale, Star, Charles, and Westview. Fairview and Crestdale were approaching expectations. Fairview was fairly close, it's 54%. For the overall points were needed to be 54.8, they were at 49.45. Crestdale was at 32, and then Test and Dennis were at 13 and 17, not meeting expectations. The next one is very similar to this. It is the language arts growth indicator. And Vale, Charles, and Westview all met their expectations. Star was approaching, and Fairview, Crestdale, Test, and Dennis did not meet expectations.
And so when you review this, as we are becoming, evolving, and growing into the professional learning organization that you all have, that as a community has charged us with, this is an area, primary example of where we would lean on the schools that have indeed exercised success, find out what those best practices have been ushered in and implemented. Because one thing's for sure is we don't the demographic makeup of our entire corporation is very, very similar. And so if indeed we're seeing success in one school, we can definitely mimic and see that same success elsewhere.
All right, the next graph, we're going back to math.
Okay, I'm
Yes, sir.
still trying to catch up. I'm looking. We have a federal report card for the math, and we have one for the ELA.
Mm-hmm.
And this is back off of this.
This is just based on our standardized tests, our iLearn standardized tests through the state of Indiana is what it's based off of. But the federal government gives us a report card off of our state tests.
So the first two things that we looked at, NWA and iReady, we have choice on which formative assessments we use. So we choose from an approved vendor list that the Department of Ed provides. That was the first two data points. This is the new federal report card, which is accountability at that level. We won't have state accountability. It's just federal accountability this school year. So this is brand new to you. What you're looking at right now in these slides has not been shared before. This is a new formula for looking at federal accountability.
Well, as you can tell, the confusion in my face.
Sure.
Overall points, that doesn't, how,
And that's
that doesn't
provided
tell
by
me
the federal
anything.
government.
I'm assuming overall points is out of 100.
No,
No.
it depends. So this one could be out of 132.
See,
The one before that is out of 145.
Oh, okay, I see it now.
Yeah.
And there are different categories that score points for each building, and you'll see at the very end, Mr. Baker will give you an overview of where each school landed in terms of did not meeting, approaching expectations, and meeting expectations based on all of the different indicators. What he provided this evening for you is just a snapshot of the growth, in which is one component, one indicator that then calculates into that overall federal accountability rating score. So again, he's just showing you the overall math growth, as well as the language arts growth. And then there is gap data that he'll be showing in the next two slides.
Yeah. So these are more intriguing to me than
So there are further slides that explain this.
And there are other indicators, chronic absenteeism, there are other indicators. We're just looking at the achievement data. But we can definitely provide for you in either a board update or a future board meeting, all of the different indicators that are now being calculated into the federal rating.
Well,
I
I'm
think
just
that would
trying-
be helpful.
I'm just trying to sit here as a board member saying, okay, we have overall math growth at 13.78. As a board member, I don't even know what to watch or gauge to see how that's improving.
Of the 633 students that were tested, 57 of those students showed growth.
which is not acceptable.
Does that make sense to you?
Well, that does, so does that equal the percentage?
Correct. So then that-
13.78 then a percentage?
It's
Is that
based
total?
off of the growth factor of 1.45, so it's the 57 times 1.45, I think is what gives you.
The percentage of students showing math growth would be 9%. So it's the 57 out of 633 students at Dennis.
Okay, well, I guess I don't have to worry about it much longer, but still.
I do
I
think
mean, as you look at this, you've gotta be, as a board member, you have to be able to sit back and say, okay, how do I gauge the improvement? And then understand what we are doing.
absolutely.
Well, I think just, like you say, attached to the update, a brief explanation of what goes into, or even just the tables of what makes up the scores. And then we can dig in as much as we want. I think the aggregate data, I mean, obviously the feds are using formulas to come up with this stuff. And I mean, we have some big holes.
But we gotta make the assumption that, like, for the 57 in this example, the 57 is, in my brain, at grade level. Or
Growth.
above.
No, showed adequate growth, 1 year's worth of growth.
You're looking at the growth too.
But 1 year's of growth may not provide that student with grade level
Mastery could still
mastery.
be.
So then I would
Because
rephrase that as 57% of this, or 57 students showed at least 1 year or more growth.
Correct.
Sorry, guys, I just,
No.
And this is new to all.
Yeah.
We,
I mean, I need to, you know, especially, not only do we need to understand it, but we have reporters over here, and all of a sudden we turn around and say, okay, we have, 57 out of 633. Wow, all of a sudden we're gonna be slammed. I mean, we have enough reasons to be slammed, but still.
Yeah, would it be appropriate if I create a screen recording of the data and could I send it to you to email to them?
Yeah.
Would that
Yeah,
be
I
easier
ju-
than
yeah, just-
print it off and
Yeah.
a bunch of typing and pictures?
Just anything that would help us understand the numbers we were looking at.
I'll get that done.
And one of the things as a school principal that I had always encouraged our faculty and staff to keep in mind is that with growth data, we used in WE at the time, and Richmond scores and what, growth data is imperative, it's very important, but we would always challenge our faculty and staff to create stretch goals and look and try and, again, stretch such momentum as best as possible, because we too had students that were 2-3 grade levels behind, and with 1 year's of growth, well, now that same student is now just 2 years behind, or 1 year respectively behind, and so
But
as you,
if they're only picking up 1 year and 2 months growth, and they're 3 grade or 4 grade levels behind, we're not seeing the real picture. I mean, yes, we could argue that they didn't lose any more, but they're unfortunately in a position that they have to gain more than the average student.
I mean, I think these charts show exactly where we think we're at. We have major issues to work on, and I'm not, in general, not surprised by these things. And so digging into, I mean, why is math important? Because these charts are, right? So you can read and understand.
but also going back to one of the initiatives that's found within these strategic goals that came from the strategic planning, the importance of being data driven with our decision making and intentionality, pinpointing again successful best practices compared to things that need to be reimagined. And so we indeed, to your point, Mr. Weber, we have some work to do.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, Don in July showed us
Yeah.
similar results.
Yeah.
So I'm just glad to see that we're continuing to work, continuing to chip away at it. So it's our job. That's what we're
I
doing.
hope to be able to show you some nice growth data around the holidays.
Okay.
We will be able to.
Pretty close
Yes.
of the holidays.
2 days?
Let's give them till Christmas.
All right,
That's nice.
this is an important slide to look at. This is the math closing achievement gaps growth indicator. So this first column over here is the adequate growth for the bottom 25% and adequate growth for the top 75%. So when those students tested in the previous year, each school got a bottom 25%. So Vail had 13 students in the bottom 25% based on their student enrollment. Star 17. This is just grades 3 and 4. Fairview 9. And so you can see the bottom 25% growth at each building. And then the top 75% for each building over here. This is in math. And you had Vail exceed expectations. Vail exceeded expectations with a 101.91 rating, and then we had Star, Fairview, Westview, and Charles meet, and then Crest, Dale, Tess, and Dennis not meet. Language arts, same thing. You get your bottom 25% over here with adequate growth, and your top 75% over here with their adequate growth. So you can see we made a little bit more gain at Test and Dennis in language arts than we did in math. Then we had Vail, Charles, Westview, Star meet expectations with Crestdale, Fairview, Test and Dennis not meeting expectations.
Mr. Baker, if I can also just add in to bring clarity, Charles, Westview, and Vail all met or exceeded expectations in both the growth category and the gap growth. Growth of all students and then gap of lowest percent and then those highest achieving students. So I think that's worth celebrating with the Charles and Westview teams as well as Vail, especially in that grade 4th, what they've been able to do in growing students from 3rd to 4th grade is really exceptional. So that needs to be noted for sure.
And you don't have to provide this information, but if you wanted to look at the top 25% adequate growth rate, can you?
We can look individually by each student
Okay,
and identify how much growth.
if I wanted to pull out, rather than the 75,
Mhm.
I would like, I would be curious what the quote top quarter are doing.
And, and one thing I do wanna say, I don't know if I should say, but just so you know, this is just 4th grade data. There's no growth data in 3rd grade, and we don't have 5th grade at the elementary level. If a school has 5th grade at the elementary level, they're gonna get growth for 4th grade and 5th grade. So if you have a school, a 4th grade that performs at a lower level for a year, that's gonna be a substantial ding on your federal accountability, because there's only one grade level of growth to base that on.
All right.
Well, there we go. Federal report card did not meet Crestdale, Fairview, Test, and Dennis did not meet expectations. Expectations were Star Westview and Richmond High School, and then meets expectations Charles and Vale. So outstanding job to Charles and Vale, and we I don't want to say anything negative about the work we're doing. So we're going to continue to pound away and make this better. Richmond High School. Here's some data for the graduation rate from 2016 to 2022. 95%. It's kind of stayed steady around 95. It went up to 98. Went down to 94. I want to tell you the same thing I told Mrs. Sonsini and Dr. Wright. I was a high school principal for the last 3 years. So my first year as high school principal was during COVID, and the amount of work it takes to get your graduation rate to a 94, 93, 95% is unbelievable. It is unbelievable the amount of work it takes from an admin team, mainly since we've dealt with COVID, to get where they're at. So the time that they've put in and the effort that they've put in is outstanding. Academic honors, 28.5 last year, the previous year 17.2. Looks like that kind of goes up and down, but stays steady around 25. Technical honors, 7.4% of the students last year, which is the highest you've had since 2016. Students graduating with a Core 40 diploma. This is another thing I want to talk to you about. From 56% up to 62 in 2018, down to 51 in 2022. This is part of what I'm talking about. We try to make a student stay on the Core 40 track for as long as you possibly can. And they may go to a general diploma track in that last week because it's the only way they're going to graduate. And that is just part of what high schools have faced with COVID and virtual school and just students not coming to school. So being at 51% is actually probably way more impressive than anybody in here realizes. General diploma, you can see the 10%, 14% the year before, 7%. And then students that received a certificate of certificate of completion, right here, these are mainly students in the essential skills class. And then there's one over here in 2017 for dropouts for 4, but there's no other data given to me about dropouts. Well,
I hate seeing those class sizes diminish, but.
part of that is COVID. I've never in my career had students that just disappeared. And one mom might say they're working in Ohio or Kentucky with a family member, and they are long gone from your high school or your town, in terms of graduation. So there are several students that just have gone elsewhere and done something else due to just the pandemic over the last few years. I can't get this to go any further.
We've also had a high number go to homeschool. 14% or something like that. rebounded from 250 to 270.
And as we're transitioning, this is the first of a two-part data series by our directors, so we broke that up. So this evening is Mr. Baker with student achievement, and then a technology update from Mr. Perkins. And then at our next board meeting, you'll hear from Mr. Wright, Director of Student Support, and then also Mrs. Markford, our Director of Exceptional Ed.
And what I will say with regard to Mr. Baker's presentation and the federal report card is as to those particular schools that may not have met or approaching expectations, that with this being brand new, we indeed will tackle any and all challenges and continue to work toward moving all of our school houses into that meeting of expectations. And I think that with the schools that are there and the schools that are approaching, again, going back to that professional learning organization, not being fearful of reviewing data with one another, sharing those trade secrets that is found within all of our classrooms will only allow for all of our schools to get to where we expect them to be and where they want to be, and where our faculty and staff are working hard to get to. And so.
Yep, and I will work on the screen recording, the video for you guys about our data, and try to give you a deeper dive into what our data looks like. And then I would love to, present, whether I present or not, around Christmas break, it doesn't matter, but I will provide you the growth data in another screen recording, as long as you guys can handle seeing my face and my voice for probably longer than this, so, or hearing my voice, so. Anything else?
Thank you.
No, we
Thank
appreciate
you.
you, Mr. Baker. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Hello, members of the board. It's been a while since I've been before you all. Mine will not be nearly as long and or engaging as Mr. Baker's. I apologize, or you're welcome. But mine's good, just very straightforward data. Just want to give you guys an overview. Some of you may or may not know some of this information. Others probably have heard it time and time again. So we'll just start with some of the basics. Currently we have over 10,000 devices district-wide. This is broken down between our classroom displays, staff laptops, which has evolved over the past couple of years. We started out teachers, then became teachers and secretaries, teachers and clerical, teachers, and so it's blossomed. So that's added to our numbers. Student devices, which are now mostly Chromebooks, iPads, which teachers also have iPads along with their laptops. We've got dozens of printers per floor of every building. And RHS is its own entity when it comes to technology. So there's a plethora of devices over there that you wouldn't even see anywhere else in the district. And that's just because of all the various programs and specialized labs they have set up over there. So 10,000's not even touching the iceberg. I mean, I say 10,000 because that's what I can readily pull to mind is that amount of devices, but that, it's incrementally more than that. So then another thing, and this is one of the proud moments that we kind of hit, as a fall break, we have finished all of our major infrastructure upgrades. Now that doesn't mean that we're perfect. We're nowhere near where we could be. I mean, if we had all the money in the world, we do so much more, but we can't. It's public education. But we've updated the hardware in the data center. That was one of the final pieces that we had left that finished during fall break. The hardware in the server room throughout the districts, that has been happening over the past couple of years. And so that was something that we do, when we had time, getting those parts done. The wireless connectivity, that was a big blitzkrieg that we did to take care of that and replacing all the 500 APs that we have in our district, APs being wireless access points. We upgraded our virtual server environment, but we had to move all those servers over. Migrating them takes time. Fall break was when we finally moved Power School over to that new environment, so that was the big finish on that, and get rid of the old virtual environment, not have anything vital left on that, which is great. And then increasing our overall bandwidth. I mean, it's not like it was a major increase. We went from 1 gigabits per second to 2. So, but that still is enough that, it's something that we're not being bottlenecked by that.
So do we, I know, just for instance, my son at school, they are limited as to like no printers or be wireless, you know, to try to get a hold. Do we do anything like that to try to make sure?
Absolutely.
I mean, hardwire obviously takes
Absolutely.
less, okay, so that's.
And also one of the things that we do actively, I mean, between myself and the two network administrators, we're actively watching just to make sure that there aren't anything, you know, because you have people that will see our open public network and they're connected. So we're constantly fighting that as well and battling it and keeping other things off. So we have, not only do we have the things in place within the district, but we're actively, you know, combating different things that could be potentially utilizing our bandwidth and slowing down the actual instructional use of our network. So I just thought I'd throw in some actual numbers because again, this is something that I communicate with Dr. Wright on quite a bit. And I watch it myself just because I like to see where we're at, what we're doing as a district as far as how technology is being used. 88% of the usage is reported between the hours of 7 to 4, which makes sense, you know, you think that, but you also think we're 1-to-1 district-wide. We have our dentists, Hibbard, high school kids getting their devices sent home every day, but the usage shows that once they go home, those devices aren't being used. I threw the graphs up there, so if you take a look, you can see where it drastically falls down. You get to that 2 to 4 mark, and then it's done. And if you actually look at the data and see the trends, once it hits that outside of school hours, you're getting YouTube videos. The kids are looking up, how do I get around the filter? You know, things like that. That becomes your normal searches and things. So it kind of, it falls off and they're just kind of using it for YouTube most of the time.
On your, you said top 3 websites are Google, YouTube, and Canvas. Do we know where Google is sending them? So
We can
Google's
find
just a search
that-
engine.
Well, you can see that information.
Okay.
It's not as simple as looking at it like that, but you can look and see, so you can see every single search term they've used in Google. Or you can see.
So do we know where Google's sending them? I mean, is there like a Wikipedia? Is there Amazon? I mean, if they're searching on Google, they're going somewhere from there.
They're going all over.
Okay. Yeah.
So no. It's really hard to break that down because your typical use, and that's why I kind of gave a good one for, that was the YouTube, where we hit 1 million hits per month is your average on YouTube. So when you're saying YouTube is your second most visited site, with Google being the top, you're hitting far over 1 million a month. So to break that down, I could break it down. I could give you those actual searches, but it's
someone
pretty,
is kind of, I mean, you have a sense of.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's all I need.
And the only reason I just wanted to give you an overview of what you really are seeing, because I could go down and I mean I have it in my head. Once you get past Canvas, you've got the next thing being Clever, which is what we use for a lot of our SSO to get to, and that's single sign-on to get to different apps that they use during the day. So like Alexia, Dreambox. And then after Clever, you know, you've got where their next thing down, Lexia is one of the top visited. I was just giving like a typical overview of more of what you're seeing on a daily basis, like what we're constantly watching, and that is something, you know, I'll break down further to look, and if we notice something like that, then, you know, you address it that way. So we have addressed different issues with students that are looking for those things by saying, okay, well, we're looking at their Google search results and seeing this kid is the one that's constantly looking every day for that same thing to find how to get around the filter, or where they found that file to share with these other kids to do that. So it's just kind of to give you guys an idea of what they are being used for, when they're being used, how they're being used.
Mr.
And
Perkins,
actually-
could that also be Google's, like, do Google Docs or Google Sheets or
Absolutely,
Google Slides? So when we say
absolutely.
Google, it's not just the search engine,
Right,
it could
gotcha.
be.
And it's also the mail as well, yeah.
Okay.
So Google is, especially with us moving to Google, I mean, Google does encompass a lot. So it is, and the devices they use are Chromebooks, so one of the first things they're gonna do, go to Google. So it would be hard pressed for it not to be the top thing.
Gotcha.
So, Could you explain, I know parents ask, what safeguards are in place for students to not end up?
So, the safeguard that does the most of damage control is Lightspeed. That's our filtering agent. I know, I'm pretty sure all of you that are here now, board member wise, were here when we had, when I come in before to explain the filtering we had then. It's evolved dramatically since then. The new Lightspeed does so much more, and that's why part of the thing with like the YouTube, it filters out certain search terms in YouTube, and it will not allow students to watch videos because of like a word that may be inappropriate in it, or if it's age restricted, it will not allow them to use it. Also, we have with Chromebooks, we have a little bit more control outside of that as well, where we can add more restrictions in place so they can't run certain scripts on their devices and things like that. So there are different layers that we've also added that are in the background as well.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on this slide? And the last slide, see I said this is much quicker than Mr. Baker's. I just want to do a very quick breakdown of what we're seeing as far as breakages so far this year and insurance per building. At the high school we've had, and the reason I was very specific, I said turned in damages. The only way we'll know if a device is damaged is if the student brings it down to help desk and says, hey, I broke it. So this is not saying this is the 100% accurate number as far as what could be broken. There could be 100 devices out there broken right now, and none of the kids are bringing them down to have them serviced, so we wouldn't know. But so far at the high school, we've had 60 turned in. We have an overall of the 1,600-ish students at the high school, 211 of their devices are currently insured. At Dennis, we've had 143 turned in so far this year. Only 117 of those student devices are insured. And when I say not those damaged, those period throughout the entire building. At Test, we've only had 13, and there are currently 88 students that are insured. That number is so much better than last year, but that's also because Test has developed a different model, and with the model that they're working and that has worked for them, that has drastically decreased their number of damages coming back. And then Hibbard has 0 turn-in damages and 29 insured devices. Okay, anyway, we're not listening to what she's saying. There's 0 turned in from Hibbard, and that's actually a really nice number to see, because even with Hibbard being a smaller school, we still saw some last year, and I feel like these numbers compared to last year this time are still far better, except maybe Dennis. Dennis is pretty bad.
That's pretty
Yeah.
significant. Well, what concerns me is I'm gonna make a leap here, and with so small percentage of our devices insured and damage rates that high, there must be a lot of battles on repair cost.
There is.
And since we have these listed as textbooks, does that not create another level of difficulty or problems for us?
It does. It does. It's
See, and you thought this was gonna be shorter.
well, and then we start talking finances. But no, it is, and over the years, we've been working to better the way of trying to recoup some of those costs as far as actually making sure that the building happens and getting better billing cycles in. And so, we still do get some back. The number that we get back is very small in comparison to the amount of damages going out, obviously. But it's better than it has been. That's a plus. I think moving forward, it'd be nice if we could look at different options. One of the things that also becomes a really hard battle is the fact that we as a district can't insure those because of that textbook portion of it. But trying to figure out a different way to go about that, or maybe seeing if it's worth fighting that battle to be self-insured.
So just for curiosity, off the top of your head, out of the 143 turned in damaged at Dennis, how many of those are repeat? I mean, is there a lot?
That one's a hard one to kind of think off the top of my
I'm
head.
just curious, is there like 20 students that recurrently, have 5 turned in damaged?
With that one, no. We have some that are habitual. We have some that will turn in the same device broken within a week. We had one instance where there was a kid that broke the same device 5 times in 1 week. I mean, they got it back, it was fixed, they broke it, turned it back in, fixed, but just kind of 1 week, 5 times. But that's more of a wider list of kids. I feel like right now it's less of the repeat offenders and more of just blatant disregard.
So, kind of thinking back into what he said there, 143 devices turned in at Dennis, 117 are insured. How many of those damaged were insured?
Very small number. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Well,
Very
Maybe
small
6,
number works.
Maybe 6.
Yeah, okay.
And are the damages, are they inflicted by students, or can it be a damage where just like it stopped working, and like what's
That's
the
a
ratio
good question.
there?
That's a very good question. I would not have counted anything that wasn't billable in this, because if it's something that is just something that was not the kid's fault at all, it's just gonna get repaired. I mean, that we have to do that. There's no reason to count that as a damage. No, because if that was the case, that number would be far greater, because we had an outbreak of keyboards that we were replacing, and that number was much higher than this. But those were not by any fault of the student. It was a manufacturing defect. So no, these are just things like student punched the screen because they're upset, broke it. I used it to hit my friend in the head with because I was upset. Things like that. It's more of just.
but like if you're at like 6% of the kids are having problems at the high school, and you're at like 3 or 4% at Dennis, I mean that means we need to do something different at Dennis. I don't know what it is, but
Well, and see that I kind of wish now that we could go back to last year, and I kind of wish I would have put those numbers up for comparison. Afterthought. But last year you would have seen about the same thing at test. Those numbers were atrocious.
so what? They're obviously doing something right.
Well, but they're using a different model as far as how they send them home.
Do most of the damages happen at home, or do you have a feel for if they happen at school?
It's kind of
Just
a
just
combination of
depends.
both, but a lot of it just happens in the classroom.
Mhm.
'Cause is that
Quite a bit of it happens
2%?
where
Is that their rate of damage?
they'll, like I said, they're throwing it down the
2% of the
hallway, or
kids have
throwing them at
problems.
each other, or swinging them around, things like that.
650 kids and 13 damages. That's pretty good rate.
Well, it sounds like it's a pretty good line budget number too. You notice he didn't tie dollars to this.
Test
I mean,
devices aren't going home. So they're staying in the building.
Well, they're not using them at home, so maybe that. I mean, you have 650 kids at Dennis, give or take. 143 are damaging their computers through.
And that was one of the reasons I wanted to bring these numbers to you guys,
That's
because you
crazy
would never really have any idea of what I see on a daily basis, and what we combat. We have those calls, those conversations with the parents, and most of the time
1,200 kids and 60 computers. I mean, it's the rate is crazy. I mean, I don't know. I think I would charge administration, but I mean, if they're not using them at home, maybe the computers don't need to go home. Because
well, and see the way that they do it. Like I'm glad you said it. It's not so much that they took it away from them to take it home. It was more the idea that they only go home if they need with tests. That's where that conversation kind of blossomed. And so as you see, they're not going home enough that they're just being treated like toys, I guess, because the kids at Dennis, but the kids at Dennis also carry them with them all day throughout the building. They've got them to and from the building. So at test, they're left in the classroom. They use them when they're there. They
But
take
the high
them.
school can function. I mean, they're doing the same thing that the kids at Dennis are, right? Go class to class, take
Right,
them home.
right.
Yes,
So-
but I also think there's a level of maturity
There is,
when we're
exactly.
talking about the students, and we can definitely revisit, we hear what you're saying as far as expectations with devices at the school, and if they aren't needing them for homework, then we could potentially have that conversation with the building leaders at Dennis to say, you know, is there a place that they can leave in their homeroom, but they're also traveling throughout the day versus at Test, they have a pod of a few teachers they're interacting with versus 6 or 7. So we can definitely have those conversations because the numbers, as you see, are alarming at Dennis.
Mr. Perkins, do we still indeed have within our corporation laptop carts located at schoolhouses, or have we
No.
done away with those?
Because we didn't, it's the only place that we had them was K through 4.
Gotcha.
And then Test, when they wanted to develop their new model, they went ahead and had building funds, or they had a grant, something like that. And so they purchased enough carts to then be able to cart the ones there. So that's how we did that. What I had done at one point in time was I purchased charging strips for the other buildings, so they would at least have something if there were the need to say, well, they're staying in this room, give them a place that they could charge them in the back of the classroom or something. But no, right now, no building outside of Test that's not K through 4 has carts.
Do we still have the old laptops?
Yeah.
The volume of them are,
For the most part, no. Those were obsoleted pretty quickly.
Mr. Perkins, if you don't mind just sharing from your experience and from what you have experienced over the course of time, what would be your two, it was a perfect world when it comes to technology and it comes to usage. Where do we have areas of improvement throughout the corporation when it comes to actual usage, content, utilizing the tools for what they're intended to be used for?
Honestly, I think that one of the big things that would be helpful as far as getting that level of engagement, I think there is more that we could do as a whole to teach that at the forefront. But at the same time, I also think that we could look at the whole model differently. Right now, we're looking at it as we have one-to-one devices. These one-to-one devices should always go home. And I've always questioned that back myself. I'm like, but then do we say the same thing to a textbook? Do you say you cannot leave your textbook in your locker? You have to take that home every single day. I've
if
never
we're
heard anyone
losing
say that.
25% of our textbooks, I think we'd do something different.
Right, precisely. So then my thought is why do we then say you must take your laptop home every day instead of saying, here, we have this safe place for your laptop to stay, unless you have homework, unless you have a need to take it home, unless you are actually going to be actively engaging yourself on your device, you can leave it here. You can allow it to be charged so you can use it the next day. You can, I feel like there are other ways that we could look at redeveloping. Like, I feel like we need to take a step back and redevelop the entire one-to-one program, honestly. And that's just from what I've seen and what I've experienced in the past 2 years. It's been hard to watch because I love technology. I mean, I love the idea of seeing as much technology around here, and it keeps me with a job. But I don't like seeing it misused. I don't like seeing it abused. I feel like from one end of the spectrum to the other, we just need to completely revamp it.
I mean, if we were losing 25% of our library books, I mean, we would be
Well,
pretty
and
up in
what
arms.
you have to keep in mind too, this is a small number compared to what it was.
It's shocking. Appreciate your insights and thoughts.
And these are only numbers we know about. Wait till the end of the year when we
Big.
turn them in.
And that is a big one, because you will have so many kids that will have a device that was broken all year, and they turn it in and then you're broken, or they don't. That's another one. They just don't turn it in. So you hit the nail on the head right there. That's just what we
Pardon the
know.
pun.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you.
He just
Thank you, Mr. President.
like, thank you.
That was rather riveting.
Riveting.
I apologize.
serious.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, both of you, guys. Appreciate it. Moving on to item 5, consent items. Dr. Wright?
President Weber, trustees, I come before you this evening to ask for approval of consent items 5.01 through 5.05, as well as the addendum associated with 5.02 as presented, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I move to approve the consent items with the addendum as presented.
Motion by
I
Aaron
will
Stevens, second by Brad Walton. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item 6, action items. Dr. Wright?
President Weber, trustees, prior to moving on to action item 6.01, with the approval of human resources, consent item 5.02, as well as the addendum, we have just now appointed a new member to our educational team. And if he indeed would join us at the podium, Mr. Stephen Hensley is our new STEAM coordinator for the Hibbert Building. Mr. Hensley, welcome, sir. If you don't mind just maybe sharing a tidbit about yourself and what you're most looking forward to in the new role as coordinator of the STEAM program.
Thank you. Thanks for the time tonight. I appreciate it. I know it's late and you guys have been working all day, so I appreciate your time. My name's Stephen Hensley, and I am going to be the new director of STEAM and the Imagination Lab here at Richmond. I'm really, really excited. There's so much opportunity here. There's so much room there's so much to do. So I'm really, really excited. I think we oftentimes think of STEAM, we forget that when we think about STEM, we just forget the A, the arts. So I'm really excited to include that and the work we'll do with that. But at the core of what I do, I'm really appreciative that I think students, I believe in them every day, and I really believe that there's nothing they can't do. So I'm really excited to join the team. I'm excited to get in the buildings and to work with everybody and to meet everybody. I think there's a lot to do, but I'm really ready. So
At the same time, I think you have some excitement going on at home, if you don't mind me sharing, or if you don't mind maybe divulging to our Board of Trustees, some of the members there within your household.
Yep, so my wife and I, we have 2 kids. We're both teachers. She teaches kindergarten. I've taught 8th grade. I've taught up to 10, 11, 12. So she's been teaching for 6. I've been teaching for 7 years or 8 years. I forget at this point. My mother-in-law's a teacher. My brother-in-law's a teacher. We're all teachers, and we talk about at Thanksgiving. We argue about pedagogy sometimes. It's really exciting. But I have 2 kids. My son, Gray, he's 2, a little over 2, turns up 2 in September. And my daughter, Navy, she was born 2/22/22. Had to fight the doctor for that one, but we got it. She'll be 9 months old in a few days. So my house is really busy. Our hands are full, but it's really exciting.
Can you share how you plan to market the STEAM initiative? Again, this being brand new to our corporation, amazing building led by an amazing building level principal. I have a bias, that's my former alma mater, but nevertheless, some of the marketing ideas that you have to generate momentum and interest in this program.
Yeah, marketing is going to be really, really important when we launch this program, especially considering we want to make sure everyone knows about it. So accessibility is huge. Making sure how we're communicating with parents is really important before we even decide how we're marketing it. But I think the way to market this is that this is an investment opportunity that you can leverage your options into opportunity for your child or your student in the district. Whether that be you choose to invest in the program, which I really think they will and they'll want to, but invest in marketing it as an opportunity for the future. That STEAM integration and this kind of really targeted focus, it's interdisciplinary and cross-curricular, is the way of the future. We know that marketable growth for jobs in Indiana or STEM and STEAM is not going away. It's only increasing. So are we preparing students for the future or preparing for them now? And I think that's the goal, is preparing for the future, because right now we have the opportunity to teach them for what's to come. So I think that's the way you market this program successfully.
And with it being a lottery-based program and us working alongside any university, not only locally but also there out of Bloomington, I know that equity is something that we indeed, and our board has charged all of us to maintain and put into motion. I recall during a conversation we had that you stated that when it comes to drumming up support, drumming up interest, you wouldn't mind during these still pre-planning stages to be loaned out. I think you said, hey, you know what? Send me to the school, whichever it is. If there's kids, I'm there.
Yeah, I'm a teacher, I love kids, so I do. And kids are the best part of the job. They're exciting, they're new, you never know what to expect. They're the best part of the job. So send me to the buildings. I'll talk to anybody. I'll talk to whoever it is. Send me wherever you want to send me, I'll go. Like there's no place I won't go really. So and if it's for the kids, I'm in. So yeah, I'm so excited. And I'm really honored to be here. It's the first one, so I'm really excited.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So, it looks like you start on the 21st of December, is
Mhm.
that right? Okay,
Yeah, so my current district, there's a statute that they can hold you for 30 days.
okay,
So that, by that point, by the time you notice, it would have been the 16th of December.
Okay.
And then their semester ends in 4 days.
Okay.
So we were to figure it out, work together so I can finish with them. So they have a clean break because staffing, as you know, is probably impossible. So we're working together to find a candidate for them and leave on good terms. And so they are
Yeah.
supported and that they have the people they need while I transition out into this role and something that I want to do and something that I really need. So I'm excited.
Well, while Mr. Hensley is new to Richmond Community Schools on this formal certified position, you're not necessarily new to our corporation entirely, is that correct?
No, I am not. So when I did my undergraduate degree, I have a degree in biochemistry from IUE, so I did my undergrad there, and then I decided to transition to teaching to my master's. But student teaching, I was actually here for a long time, years and years and years ago at the high school. So I got to student teach here and other places, so I was really excited to have the opportunity to come back. It's been a long time since I came back, but it felt really nice to see the buildings and get in there and see what was going on. So I'm not new to the district, but I am new here in this role.
so
Yeah.
IU East, obviously Richmond, and then, student taught at RHS. What did you do for your student teaching?
So I student taught biology and chemistry.
Okay.
So my license is life sciences 5 to 12. That's my primary license. I have some other ones that need to dust off, but I can if I need to. But I primarily work in the sciences and integrating, especially like computer science, what that looks like in a classroom that hits those standards that are with the new rewrite. So that's what I kind of do.
Who did you student teach with at Richmond?
Bailey.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'll just add, I mean, this has been an initiative for the board for some time, and anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it.
It's,
Did you hear that, Cassie?
And John
Yeah.
said that
Just-
to ask him, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm a tech guy, so
Yeah.
I'll send you his contact information.
I think we often try to influence administration to, go different directions, and the board, I think, has been very consistent and strong, and this is a program we want, and for numerous reasons, but mostly for our kids.
Yeah.
And so we just want to continue that support and support you in any way we can.
I appreciate it, I really do. I in my current role, I do live in the world of data. So Mr. Baker got up and gave his talk about all the data. It was not new for me, so I totally get the numbers and I get where it's all coming from, and I really look at this STEAM initiative and this program as just another leverage of support for the existing supports you already have. It's just another thing in your toolbox for the kids. That's what it is.
And to piggyback on what you mentioned of the work that Mrs. Loudermilk has done, along with Mrs. Sansini and a collection of teachers and others that have gone out and surveyed and brought back to our corporation a plan of action that you're walking into is going to be of benefit. And again, for Mrs. Loudermilk and for so many others that have already put a lot of time, energy, and efforts into it.
Yeah.
I think the stage is set for us to really have a unique program that will not be found anywhere else in our county. Hopefully, we will soon be able to say will not be found anywhere within our state and national. So we definitely have high hopes.
Yeah, and we're hit the ground running.
I believe that he is very energetic and passionate about this field, and he's unlike any candidate that I've seen in that passion. So I'm excited to work with him.
We had
Combination.
several candidates, it sounds like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was a much contested
Very
position.
contested. Here we go.
Yeah, I'm
So
really,
congratulations.
thank you. I'm very appreciative. I'm really looking forward to it.
Welcome aboard.
Great,
Thank
well,
you.
goodness, thank you.
All right, back to business. Dr. Wright.
President Weber.
Action items.
Yes, sir. President Weber and trustees, I come before you with action item 6.01, donations, with a recommendation to accept the donations from our many local businesses and others who have supported our community school system for some time and continue to support us. So the recommendation is to accept the donations as presented.
Thank you.
I'll recommend, or I'll make a motion that we accept 6.01 donations as presented with a very big thank you over $11,000 worth of donations.
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Brad Walton, second by Kristen Brunton. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to item 6.02, 8th grade field trips. Dr. Wright.
President Weber, trustees, I ask that Assistant Superintendent Don Sancina join our conversation for approval of action item 6.02.
Thank you. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees accept the overnight 8th grade field trip request for Dennis Middle School and Hibbert Program Building as presented. Dennis 8th grade students will be traveling to Atlanta, Georgia, May 8th through the 12th, and Hibbert 8th grade students will be traveling to Washington, D.C., April 26th through the 29th.
Thank you.
I'll make the recommendation that we approve the field trips as presented.
Motion by Jeff Schleifer,
I'll second.
second by Nicole Stoltz. Any questions or comments? I'll just add, this is an unusual case to have two 8th grade field trips, and the expectation is that we'll have one next year.
That is correct.
And just to add, it is nice for us to have one 8th grade field trip. One of the rationales for that is just to have a unifying experience for all of the 8th graders prior to going into the high school together, just to have that common bond. Hopefully it's not traumatic, but it's kind of like trauma bonding. We went through this entire, trip together, and now we've got something to talk about. No, I think it's going to be a wonderful experience for both, but it would be great to see them all together. I see you shaking your head at me, Dr. Wright.
No, I'm just,
But-
so I'm with you.
We're not sure what your 8th grade trip was like,
I
but apparently it was quite formative.
anytime you're on a bus for that long with the same people, there are stories, and it's a good thing, but it's also it's a bonding experience. So
That was the nature of my my head movement was just but yes, to a point as you referenced that bonding and just you grow.
Yep. And then you know your class, and you're together, and you've done something.
And
And you're ready.
typically in the past, the students have always gone to Washington, D.C. With the COVID year, they went to Chicago. And this year, going to Atlanta is definitely different, but we need to throw it out there too that the students voted on where they were going. And so that was the way Dennis figured to go to Atlanta was the students actually took a vote.
And that student voice was, I think, a determining factor as to how indeed decisions were arrived upon. And then ultimately with Atlanta, of course, there are historic sites there within the southern city that students will embark upon. I believe there is also collegiate visits, as is referenced to the city of Atlanta. So, but yes, as we move forward, as you mentioned, that bond, so that when you walk into Richmond High School, that's something that together you will experience. Very important.
We've had a lot of students who have gone on the Washington DC trip in the years past who have come and presented to us and shared with us their experiences, their perceptions prior to going and the realities after that. I'm very interested to see how it will match the same thing going to Atlanta. You know, I've been to Washington, I've been to Atlanta, but from the historical perspective, you know, I want to see how the comparison between the two and why they would have made the choice to go to Atlanta. So.
All right.
Thank you.
And
Questions or
I
comments?
appreciate the work that's gone into, bringing people to the table in order to have a discussion. So thank you, Cabinet, for doing the work behind that. And we're glad to be able to pass both of these.
Not yet.
It possibly pass both of these.
Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Dr. Wright?
President Weber, trustees, I now ask that Mr. Glenn Schleifer, our Executive Director of Facilities, join the conversation to seek approval of action item 6.03 as presented. Mr. Schleifer?
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Yes, this is about the boiler replacement at Test and the chiller replacement at Charles. We received 3 bids for Test boiler replacement, and Charles chiller replacement were received and opened on Thursday, November 10th, 2022. The notice to the bidders was published in Platinum Item on October 14th and 21st, 2022. Proof of publication and all bid documents on the file in the business office. Bids were received from Carroll Electric, Inc., North Mechanical, Inc., and Grinder Brothers, Inc. It is recommended the bid be awarded to the lowest and most responsive bidder, Grinder Brothers, Inc., with a base bid of $516,000. 3 alternates in the bid from Grinder Brothers were as follows: alternate 1 an amount of $54,500, alternate 2 an amount of $61,400, and alternate 3 an amount of $56,050 were received. If there are any additional funds available, it is recommended the Board of Trustees, School Trustees, accept alternate 1. The option for consideration is outlined below. Alternate 1 option, accept as bid, replace hot water pumps and associated variable frequency drives. So that brings us to the recommendation. The recommendation is to award the Test boiler replacement and Charles chiller replacement bid to be awarded to Grinder Brothers, Inc. The award will include the base bid and alternate 1 as presented. The total cost of this recommendation is $570,500. Funds for this project will be utilized from ESSER Funds 3.
I'll make the motion and we accept the bid as presented.
Thank
Or
you.
the recommendation as presented.
Thank you, Glenn, and motion by Jeff Schleifer,
Second.
second by Aaron Stevens. Any questions or comments?
Just a couple of things to follow up on. This was brought to the working group, so we were aware. The budgeted amount was $540,000, I believe.
$540,000, yes.
So this is about $30,000 above that. Now there are some contingencies and some other things. When Karen is back, we may have to adjust and pull some money, a few $1,000s out of capital projects. We had asked for information about where we are on some of our ESSER funds, but from what I hear, Karen said that you didn't think any of this would be a problem, but it was gonna be the recommendation, I think, coming from the facilities working group that we do this, but I just wanted you to know that we have had some conversation on it. And there may be something that comes back at a future board meeting later saying that we may need to adjust a few funds here or there, but for the most part, nothing here is a surprise.
No, and we drilled Glenn. Just so you know. Did the due diligence there, so.
Well, there is potentially, we do have $24,000 in contingency allowance built in the $516,000. So if we use less or any of that, and then so there's 24,000 it's going to be, you can deduct off that 570. So now we're only talking about $7,000 extra, which can easily be taken out of capital if preferred, or transfer some other ESSER monies over. So there's a potential there to be just real small dollars.
The key, as with everything that we do, is that it comes in on time and on budget, as we know. We always love those 2 phrases when dealing with.
It was nice that we had 3 bids this time.
Yeah.
So moving on, any other questions or
Yeah,
comments?
Glenn, you said, and I'm not sure I heard, is the primary funding source ESSER funding?
Yes, ESSER 3.
So that means that we can supplement with non-ESSER dollars. It doesn't work the other way around if you're not gonna Davis Bacon with the wages going in, so we have some flexibility. I'm sure Karen can work with it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to policy review and update. We have 2 policies for second reading.
I would like to make a motion that we approve 7.01 bylaw 0167.6 electronic participation by board members in board meetings, and 7.02 policy 5450 local purchasing.
Motion by Brad Walton,
I'll second.
second by Jeff Schleifer. Any questions or comments on either of those 2 policies? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0.
I would also like to make a motion that we move 7.03 policy 2510 adoption of textbooks and 7.04 non-discrimination policy to second readings.
Second.
Motion by Brad Walton, second by Nicole Stoltz. Any questions or comments on either of those 2 policies? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to board reports and discussion. Item 8.01, Educational Planning Working Group.
We have not met since our last meeting, but we do have one scheduled, if I recall, next Monday, the 28th.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, Kristen? All right. Moving on to 8.02, Building and Grounds. So you guys did have a meeting. Nicole, Jeff, and Brad.
Nicole's such an eloquent speaker.
Oh, please. So the most exciting part, in my opinion, Glenn, no offense, but is when Sean talked. No, sorry. No, we had a visitor, Sean Dingworth from the Art Museum, came and told us all about the art mural that is being proposed that we install at McGuire Hall. And he had some renderings, some drawings that were just very impressive.
Awesome.
Awesome even
Wow.
would be.
They were awesome.
They were awesome.
Mr. Slifer. That's
What
high
are they?
praise.
So
It's a
we,
picture, Slifer.
I know.
Sean was
What's the
not, we
subject matter?
asked,
Or we don't? we're
no,
not
he's gonna bring them.
Oh, okay.
I believe at our next board meeting or soon, he will be bringing them. He was not available tonight because we thought, well, let's just have him show all of this. But basically he was talking about how McGuire is a WPA building, and typically they would have had a visual art component of some sort. So this is in line with the original intent and the original structure of the building. And so we're just kind of adding another layer to what we've already done, the work that's already been done that's beautiful so far. We're just getting it even more stunning, so to speak. So these panels, there are 4 panels that he's presenting that would be removable. So if we needed to paint, or if we needed, just to take them down for whatever reason for storage, then that's a possibility. In each of these panels, there are people in the arts that have been graduates of Richmond that have gone on to do noteworthy things in the arts. So it's celebrating our history, which I love. That's kind of the concept, and there's people that are living artists today as well as past. So there's a wide array of, we've got musicians, we have visual artists, there are all kinds of different. Starjanet, in fact, I've got a list of some of the different. And then it's also a lot of our the backdrop. Thank you, Ron. A lot of the backdrop is just scenes from Richmond. So you have like the Star Piano, Jeanette Records, you have Richmond Baking Company, just all kinds of different things that are, and you see all of that in the background. So, like I said, it's visually stunning, and we're very excited. And here's the really good part: we don't have to pay for it. So it is all being paid for by an anonymous donor, over $30,000 worth of funds that are coming to us free of charge to have this installed and put together. So
And even more noteworthy reference is that the artist.
yes.
Can you share just a little bit about the artist?
Yes, so the artist is a Richmond grad. In fact, graduated the same year as I did,
It's a great year.
and
It's a great
so
year.
What year was that?
1934.
I look
It was
great
back in
for
the
my
1900s.
Back in the 1800s.
Oh, wow.
So yes,
Y'all still can't top my Conestoga way.
No.
so yes, the artist Amy Reinhardt, graduate of 1994, RHS grad, and I know her. Yes. So we're all just very excited about this project. And Glenn, did you have something to chime in?
Oh, yes, and then furthermore, more on the facility side, there's two sides to that, and the educational side is the facility side, it's about a 12 by 12 area, goes on both sides, north and south side of the auditorium, and it's not going to hurt the wall. If we decide to take it off, we don't have to worry about patching it. It's not going to dismember the wall. So it's areas that is really acceptable for this painting thing of it. And I believe also in that grant, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's the educational side. They are required to show and teach our students over there how to draw these, which is, it's just keeps stacking and racking up. I mean, the free cost, the learning, the teaching, the appeal of it, it's just all, it's great.
So what Glenn's referencing is we are going to have our art students help with the mural. Like actually, she's going to come in and grid it off, and then they're going to be helping with making the mural, which is such a great experience for them to get. And then possibly, we'll see if we can get this together, but possibly have some of them listed then as well as helping with that.
And we can't, this is really Sean's idea. And the amount of detail that we put into these murals, it's really amazing. I mean, I'm telling you, you will be impressed.
I believe it's December 7th he's planning on coming.
He and the artist as well are going to join us during the board meeting to further share.
And they'll have copies of the books too.
Yes. And one
Is there
of the
a
things,
significance of December the 7th for doing it on that day?
yes,
Well,
there
It's
is.
the gift that keeps on giving. So
Mhm.
yes.
So yeah, McGuire was
Right,
initially,
right.
Yep. So it sounds like you
So it
know.
was
Maybe the
inten-
public
it was
doesn't know
intentional
this. So
for the
Aaron, go ahead.
We would definitely love to highlight that. Yes, the McGuire Hall. If you can share the history with that, Mr. Steve.
Well, I wasn't trying to take.
No.
I just wanted to know if it was intentional that it was going to
Yes.
be on December the 7th. For those who
So
don't know,
McGuire was
McGuire was being dedicated right about the time of the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 7th, 1941. And even though there was the time difference in there, it was later on in that day with the dedication of the facility that people who attended were beginning to learn for the first time of the attack. So,
So we definitely are not trying
You
to.
were there.
Outside of the outside
the
of
other
the
side.
outside of the dedication of the art, outside of the dedication of the art, we definitely don't want to repeat history just December 7th with anything militarily. But
Yeah.
it indeed will be a great dedication. Yes, sir.
All right. Anything else from building and grounds?
okay. So we are talking about just the flooring at the high school. So that's something just to be aware of, that we're looking into that, as well as just still some of the updating of the main hall area. So to be
And
continued on that.
we have a meeting next Monday over at the high school.
Yep.
8.03, Finance Working Group.
We have not met.
We have not met.
We do not have a meeting scheduled
So I would say that that'll probably be after the first of the year.
yet. Just hoping it would be. There may be one in December.
I think there may be one in December.
Yes.
Thank you. 8.04 Marketing Working Group has not met either. And I think it's still waiting on samples. So hopefully those will come within the next month. Item 8.05, other discussion. Does anyone else have anything for the?
I
Mrs.
just,
Bratton?
yes, a couple of items. One I wanted to mention, especially since the data presentation, just a reminder to me, because I volunteered and I helped test students, kindergarten students at Vail at the beginning of the year, and then went back 8 weeks later. And some students showed growth on the, I had questions I had to ask them, but followed and that's easy to document, and we saw a presentation, and that data is very important. But there were other students that showed growth, but didn't show growth on my electronic device. So I had students at the beginning who couldn't even sit next to me at the beginning of the year. They weren't able to sit next to me to be tested. And although they still didn't know any letters, they came and they sat. And I also had students who didn't understand what I was asking them, what sound, and this time they attempted different sounds. None of them were right, but there was growth. So I think it's just important to remember that this data is so important for us, but also there is growth happening and it may not show up on the spreadsheets and what we see. So just to keep that in mind. And then we didn't mention last time, but Mrs. Stoltz and I visited CYS this last month, so I just wanted to mention that. And CYS is the Alternative Environment Program for students K through 12. And so we had a nice visit there, and it was good to walk around the building and see a lot of changes really since we were there last year physically, but also just pop in classrooms and see students and talk to teachers there and talk to the principal there. I thought it was a good visit. So anything you want to add to that?
No, just Mrs. Hobbs was inviting us to, we walked around and Glenn, good job on the walls that had been repaired over there, and they look so much better than when we were there last year. So
Thank you.
wanted to give you a little kudos for that. And
then the new the Hold On program.
yes.
So you went.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So we just learned about a new program there that's kind of an in between, just trying to get creative, thinking about meeting the needs of students. And Mrs. Hobbs has done a great job leading the way on that, along with the teachers, and I think maybe some work that had been done prior to put that into place, but so that there's a space for students who are suspended, but they don't have to be at home, they can come here. So it's kind of an alternative to, we're gonna keep you here and keep, we want you learning, that's the goal when someone's suspended, but it's just an option. So that was great to see other options for students who may have challenges.
That actually came about out of a great collaboration between Mrs. Hobbs, Jamie Thomas, Mrs. Cooper, myself, Dawn Sonsini, Elizabeth Markward, and trying to find a way to keep students here while also trying to focus on the other students and be aware of their needs in the classroom as well. So we felt like that was utilizing our staff in the most advantageous way, and the staff that we had available without trying to disrupt where they were located at. So just got a brief update today, and it does seem to be going pretty well.
And so we need to, indeed, as Mrs. Bowles referenced, during that particular time of the school year, which seems like many, many moons ago. But
It actually does.
It seems like when we were charged with some adversity that we all were overcoming. Yeah. But as we move down the road, we indeed, I think it would be to our benefit to afford our corporation additional alternative settings for our students to learn. Mm-hmm. Virtual options, I think, are also an area that we need to truly explore because as we know, and as was alluded to earlier, our students indeed come to us with a variety of challenges, traumas, and at times the traditional setting is just not conducive for their learning. And so the more opportunities we can provide them to learn still with us, better. And so the holding program, the things that Mrs. Hobbs and so many of our other building level principals around the district are doing to just keep kids engaged, keep them educated, and keep them in school again, it's great, and it's only gonna get better.
Just to see the way that that's evolved though, just from circling around this very table here, to see where the concept began to where it ended. And I will tell you, Mrs. Hobbs, she's even hopped on a bus to make sure that that program can be successful. And so I really commend her and her extra efforts that she's really put forth, and her staff, to make sure that that is, that they have all the tools to be successful for our students.
I had a great conversation with Mrs. Hobbs not long ago myself.
I've
and
been
some of
very
the
impressed.
Visionary ideas that she has for the program, and for ideas that, as trustees, you all have charged as far as us ushering in that PLO, that collaborative model. And to Mrs. Bowles' point, that's one of the things that we've continued to try and incorporate is collaboration and collectivity, thoughts, and receiving input and insight from all.
Well, we were very impressed with the Hold On program in general, and then with the work that Mrs. Hobbs is doing. She's advocating for those kids at CYS and doing a stellar job at doing that. So
For her staff and those kids.
Yeah.
Building a community with their staff.
Definitely, it made my heart sparkle to walk over there and see it all. I was like, okay.
And the building sparkles, the building itself
And the
sparkles.
building
It
itself,
does.
yeah, so good job on that.
Yeah, but I know that she wanted to give extreme credit to their custodian, the janitors there, that young lady that's there in that building, takes pride and ownership in the work, and you can see it, as do all of our environmental services.
All right, anything else, Kristen?
So I did want to give a board retreat update, unless you were wanting to talk about that at all.
No, I was just gonna ask someone give a ISBA review, just that we attended, on the attendees last week.
Well, I'll do board retreat and someone else can do ISBA. Does that sound good? Okay, just wanted to say that we, our board retreat on November 12th, Dr. Rice, our consultant, continues to do a great job of just keeping us focused on students and our strategic plan and why we're here, and it was a great time to come together and do that. And I just want to applaud the cabinet for bringing the directors ahead in front of us for that informed oversight that we need to be looking at all of these numbers, even when it's hard. That's the data is what is driving our decisions, keeping the students at the forefront. So I just wanted to say it was a great retreat, and that was really all I had to say about it. Did anyone else have anything about the retreat? Okay. Oh.
Anyone like to cover ISBA?
Well, the board, along with Ms. Bolzer and newly elected future board members, Mr. Zaleski and Mr. Motz, we all met with approximately 100 other school board members from around the district, the region, I should say, at William Grant's last Thursday. A lot of legislative updates that will, when you read through them, if you read through them, we should prepare ourselves for some future issues that we might be confronted with from some of the Supreme Court rulings and appeals that were upheld by the Indiana Supreme Court. I always find those very interesting because, again, if it happens there, it could always happen here, and it behooves us to arm ourselves ahead of time with knowledge. The food was good. I think, above all, the conversation at the table, again, it was like another board retreat in essence, that we could sit and we could talk and discuss some things that were not outside of the, our legal boundaries. But it was very good. It was a very good meeting. And I do commend those people who were in charge because they seemed to keep it within a very strict timeline.
Yes, love it. Anything else on board reports and old business?
And I apologize that I couldn't make the
I know what you
appointments
were
as I
doing.
did last year.
Mrs. Bolzer represented you very well.
I know that she, in my
We might
stead,
prefer
was-
her, actually.
Matter of fact,
And
Write that
also, our board member from our school district to the north was there.
Yes.
Yes, that's right.
Very well.
The opposite side of the room, though. I don't think she likes
She
it.
did that intentionally.
They stuck us on the
And so I-
corner.
Yeah, and again, a shameless plug as to why I wasn't there, but indeed, WCTV.
Right.
And invited me out to just highlight some of the amazing things that are currently going on within our school community, as well as some of the challenges and adversity we still have before us. And so I spent the evening with Mr. Marsh from WCTV. And the one thing that he said is that next time he's going to schedule 90 minutes because he didn't realize how long-winded I could be.
It was a 15-minute episode.
It is, yeah.
Might not be enough.
Everybody
I was
just
about to
react.
say, I was just about to say, Mrs. Claypool, if you duly note that the entire audience laughed, and those
Even
at home are
yours.
laughing about my long-windedness, yes. But no, needless to say, it was a great time for us to just share accuracy and transparency. So. Hilarious. Thank you.
Anything else,
Thank you,
another
everyone.
discussion?
No.
The only thing I have, and I don't want to steal the bell ringer, but basketball had their red-white game, and more importantly, I think did a food drive, which is a first-time event. I mean, the whole day was well-run, but the article written, I think, on our sports site about the food drive, explaining who was going to and why, and is a worth read if you have a minute or two. And so I would just like to give them a little kudos, because that whole day was we had 5 through 12 in teams and played some basketball and collected, I think, 1,000 pounds of food or something. And so that was a really neat event that I think the community supported, the kids supported. I mean, it was student driven, I think, and just like I said, I don't know if that's your bell ringer, but that was a fabulous Saturday afternoon. So. Moving on to item 9, preview of upcoming meeting and events.
President Weber, trustees, the next time we will come together is Wednesday, December 7th of 2021, right here. I'm sorry, 2022, right here. And then we'll go back in time.